The last day of death row inmate Louis Jones Jr., a war hero turned killer. Hello and welcome back. Today, we uncover the haunting final day of a man once hailed as a war hero, a man who served his country with honor, only to end his life strapped to a gurney inside a federal execution chamber. Louis Jones Jr. wasn't your typical death row inmate. A decorated Gulf War veteran, his life spiraled into darkness after returning home, leaving behind questions about trauma, responsibility, and justice. In just 24 hours, he would face the ultimate reckoning for a crime that shocked the nation: the brutal killing of 19-year-old Tracy McBride. What led this disciplined soldier to commit such a chilling act? And how did he spend his final moments knowing redemption would never come? Stay with us as we walk through the psychological unraveling, the last-minute appeals, and the quiet ending of a man once considered a hero. This is the final 24 hours of Louis Jones Jr. Dear friends, on March 18, 2003, in a small, secure federal facility in Terre Haute, Indiana, Louis Jones Jr. woke up for the final time. The day would end with his execution by lethal injection, the third federal execution in modern U.S. history. But Jones wasn't your typical death row inmate. He wasn't a career criminal or a product of gang violence. He was a decorated U.S. Army veteran, a former member of the elite airborne and special forces, a man who had served his country honorably until something inside him broke. The crime that brought him here was horrific. In 1995, Jones abducted, assaulted, and killed 19-year-old Tracy McBride, a young airman stationed in Texas. The brutality of the act stunned the military community and the public alike. But what made the case even more disturbing was Jones's background and the haunting question that surrounded it. Did his time in combat cause the very damage that drove him to kill? Jones's final day began like many others on federal death row, early and quiet. At around 4 a.m., prison staff conducted a routine wellness check. He was calm, alert, even cordial. There were no outbursts or pleas for mercy. He'd spent his last weeks in near isolation, writing letters, speaking with spiritual advisors, and carefully considering his final words. Unlike many on death row, Jones did not claim innocence. He admitted what he had done, but he also insisted that the person he was in 1995 wasn't the person he had once been or who he was anymore. To understand what happened in that final 24 hours, we have to go back to the beginning, before death row, before the Crimeto, the battlefield. Louis Jones Jr. served nearly 22 years in the U.S. Army. He rose through the ranks, becoming a master sergeant, earning medals and the respect of his peers. But during the Gulf War in 1991, something changed. Like thousands of other soldiers, Jones was exposed to burning oil fields, toxic chemicals, and unimaginable stress. After returning home, those close to him say he was no longer the same. He grew isolated, moody, and angry. He struggled with relationships and began drinking heavily. By the time 1995 arrived, Jones was divorced and barely clinging to stability. On February 18 of that year, something in him snapped. At a convenience store in San Angelo, Texas, Jones spotted Tracy McBride, a young Air Force recruit from Minnesota who had recently been assigned to nearby Goodfellow Air Force Base. Jones followed her home, broke into her apartment, and kidnapped her at gunpoint. What followed was a tragic and deeply disturbing series of events that ended with Tracy's death and Jones's eventual confession. At trial, Jones's legal team argued that he was suffering from Gulf War syndrome, an untreated post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. Neurological experts testified that his brain scans showed abnormalities consistent with head trauma and chemical exposure. They said he wasn't a monster, but a broken soldier abandoned by the system he once served. The jury didn't buy it. In 1995, he was convicted of kidnapping, resulting in death of federal capital crime and sentenced to death. For 8 years, Jones remained on federal death row, appealing his sentence and seeking clemency. His case became a lightning rod in debates over the death penalty, PTSD, and the responsibility of the U.S. government toward its veterans. Even high-ranking military officials and veterans advocates called for mercy, asking President George W. Bush to commute the sentence to life without parole. The Department of Veterans Affairs confirmed Jones had symptoms of Gulf War illness, but the appeals were denied. And so, on March 18, 2003, Jones faced his final reckoning. That morning, he met with his spiritual advisor and spoke with members of his legal team. He refused breakfast but accepted water. In a letter written just days before, he expressed remorse, saying he prayed daily for Tracy's family and that he had accepted his punishment. His final words were written, not spoken, and read aloud by a prison official just minutes before the execution began. They read, "To the family of Tracy McBride, I am sorry. I wish I could take back what I did. I am not the same man anymore. I have found peace in my faith. I pray you find peace too." At 7:06 p.m., the lethal drugs began to flow into his veins. His eyes fluttered briefly. His chest rose and fell one last time. He was pronounced dead at 7:13 p.m. The aftermath was quiet but heavy. For Tracy McBride's family, the execution marked the end of a long and painful journey. Her parents had fought for justice, but they never got to see the full picture of why it happened. For them, the loss would never truly be resolved. For veterans groups, Jones's death became a symbol of deeper issues of what can happen when psychological trauma is left untreated, and how even decorated heroes can become unrecognizable if left to spiral in silence. Many asked whether his execution was justice or failure. Today, Louis Jones Jr. remains a cautionary figure, a reminder of the fine line between service and suffering. His case has been studied in legal, military, and psychological circles alike. It has sparked new conversations about mental health in the armed forces and the lasting impact of war on the human psyche. And while nothing can undo what happened to Tracy McBride, the tragedy of her death, combined with the story of the man who took her life, has left behind a legacy that continues to force hard questions. How do we protect society without turning our backs on the wounded? What is the true cost of justice? And in the end, can redemption come too late? In the final hours of Louis Jones Jr.'s life, the world witnessed a man caught between two extremes: an honored war veteran and a condemned federal inmate. His story leaves us unsettled because it doesn't fit neatly into the usual narratives. He was not born into violence or chaos. He was shaped by distant battlefields, in unseen chemical clouds, and in silent psychological wounds. The brutal crime he committed can never be justified, but his case forces us to ask whether the system that trained and deployed him also failed to heal him. Tracy McBride's life was stolen, her future erased in an instant. That truth must always be at the center. But in Louis Jones Jr.'s quiet final moments, we're reminded that justice is rarely simple. It can be cold. It can be necessary. But it also comes with questions that linger long after the execution chamber falls silent. Rest in peace to all touched by this tragedy.